local meeting Atlanta, Georgia. So, sexual and reproductive justice organization with a very critical lens on HIV and its intersecting impacts in the lives of women and girls and femmes of African descent. My preferred pronouns are she, her, and we. And there's a lot that we could be talking about. But for this conversation, I am so super excited to be here with my sister Antoinette Jones. Hey, Nettie.
Hi.
She'll give you all her social media and all of that so you can like follow her, like her, groove with her, all that kind of stuff after we get through this conversation. And so folks also should know that in addition to running this amazing, incredible organization for about 31 years, started when I was 2.5, for 31 years, I'm also a host of a radio program called Sisters Time Women Speak on WRFG Atlanta 89.3 FM. And it's also on the web at wrfg.org. So the pooch.
I
Yeah,
have
he's
one
not going to
too.
give me a break. He's not going to give me a break for a second. It must be a bicycle on the street. But this is real life in the COVID era. So, Antoinette, here's what happens when I do my regular program. So, we're just going to roll it like that. However, I think I am going to close the door in just a moment. He was quiet for a second. But we start out. I don't want to do all your introduction because that's your story. You have a story. I know your story and I can give you all kinds of accolades, but we can get to that in the conversation. What I prefer to do is this is our kitchen table, right? And it's actually my Nana's kitchen table. And when Nana comes in and she sees us sitting there, she says, hey to me. And then she says, hey to you. But then she looks back at me and she goes, well, who is she and who her people's is? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So she wants to know not just who are you, because that's a part of it, but who are you? Like what you from, where are you from, who are you from, all of that kind of stuff. So tell us Antoinette Jones's story. And in that story, tell me about a pivotal or a defining moment that you know is a part of what brings you to who you are and what you're up to and why you are right now.
Awesome. So, hi everybody. I hope you can hear me clearly. Okay, awesome. My name is Antoinette, as Ms. Dazan has said, and I am a lovely 25 years old, and I am from the Bronx, New York. Also lived in Virginia, and here I am now in Atlanta, Georgia, where I do most of my advocacy and reproductive justice work. And where am I from? I'm from my many, many, many mamas. I have many of them. And when I was younger, actually a baby, I was adopted. So that was where I first received my two moms, not just my biological mom, but my adopted mom. And I tell people all the time, I was raised in a serodiscordant household. So I was the only one in my household who was HIV positive. My mom actually adopted three of my other siblings from my biological mom. So she
Mm-hmm.
adopted four of us in total. And I was the only one who was positive. And then from there, of course, my mom and my dad, they went through a divorce. And at that time, she felt like it was the right time to tell me about my HIV diagnosis because she felt like throughout the divorce, it was going to start changing a lot of things. And I was going to start hearing certain things from family members. So rather than me hear it from my biological side of the family, she was like, let me just be straight up and tell you exactly what it is that you're living with. And the question I get a lot was, well, you've been taking medicine your whole life. So what did she tell you before she told you that you were living with HIV? And I'm like, she just used to tell me, she used to say, your immune system is not as strong as everyone else's. And it just takes you a while to fight off infections. And for a long time, I actually thought I had sickle cell because I had a family member who had sickle cell and his symptoms was very similar to mine. So I was like, oh, okay, we both in and out the hospital, that's we sickle cell twins. But she actually broke it down and explained it to me. And from then was the journey that
So tell me, how
began.
old were you when she told
I
you?
was 9 years old.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
9 years old. And at the time, I kind of understood what she was telling me. I didn't understand it fully, but I knew the basics about
Mm-hmm.
HIV. My
Mm-hmm.
mom has always been very much like SisterLove, where she talked very openly about sex. It wasn't, she knew that, sex is how we got here. Sex is what we're going to encounter. So it wasn't something that she was afraid to talk to us about. She was very open. She showed us pictures. She showed us anything we asked. And she prepared me for life pretty much. So, but that was the moment that I actually started giving my mom a hard time with my medicine.
Mm.
So I don't know if it was the realization that hit or what it was, the knowing. But the second that she told me about my HIV status was the second that I didn't want to take my medicine. I gave her a hard time taking my medicine. I was just upset and frustrated. And it was just so much with the divorce and with finding out this new diagnosis. And then on top of that, finding out that I couldn't tell anybody about this diagnosis. So I had to keep it a secret.
Mm.
And it was just a lot to deal with as a child. So my mom was able to move out of that space. She moved us out of that space. It was an abusive household. So we were more than happy to move away from that in the Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
And transitioned to Virginia. Once I turned 13, we moved to Virginia. And, that's where I did my middle school, high school years, a lot of learned lessons, still kept my HIV diagnosis a secret. I had friends, didn't tell any of my friends. It was just
How
something
are you doing
that
with your meds by then?
by then I was doing good with my meds. And let me tell
Okay.
you
All
why, because
right.
we're going to get to this.
Yes, we
I was
should.
doing good because my mom, she held my hand throughout from the time I was born to the time I was 18 with my medicine. She watched me take my medicine. We took our medicine together. It was like I knew that I had that person in my life who can always be like, hey, you took your medicine, or let's take our medicine. Let's go downstairs right now. Um, Up until I turned 18. And then my mom, that's when reality hit, that turning
Mm-hmm.
point that you're talking about. And my mom was like, you're 18 now. You have to do this on your own. I can't babysit you with this medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And she kind of like helped and hurt me at the same time because you babied me for 18 years. And here I am, this big old 18-year-old kid who needs her mommy to take her medicine or to go to doctor's appointments and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
after 18, she was like, you got to set your own appointments. You got to take your medicine on your own. You got to be more responsible. This is your health we're talking about. And that's when reality hit me and smacked me in the face. And I didn't know what it was I was living with. So oftentimes I tell people I was diagnosed at 3 different times in my life. Once when
Mm.
I was a baby and born, once when my mom told me my diagnosis, and then again when I was 18, when I had to really take care of myself and my
Wow.
diagnosis.
Wow.
So I had to be a big girl and start scheduling my own appointments. And that's when I also started to realize different things with providers and the change in providers. It was a lot of tears, a lot of coddling I needed. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have any guidance. One thing that I always mention when I go to SisterLove, or when I started at SisterLove, was the fact that I never met anybody else living with HIV until I got to SisterLove. I never told anybody my HIV diagnosis until I started working at SisterLove. So SisterLove was definitely the push that really jet started my advocacy journey, because I remember going in for the interview and they asked me, why do I think I need this position, or why do I think I'll be best for this position? And I told them, I said, well, I'm living with HIV. Like, I am HIV. HIV is all I know, because it is all I know. My mom taught me everything that I needed to know around like the scientific facts and like being confident with HIV and loving HIV. But aside from that, it didn't really click until I actually had to really speak about HIV.
Wow.
So
And so now, after this pathway, this journey to this Antoinette, this amazing, strong, powerful, very clear, very sure, gorgeous sister who's still, I mean, speaking to people across 3 different social media platforms, talking all out loud about your business with HIV and all of that. what does Antoinette do now? And in terms of that whole story, why is it that you are in this work? There are so many people with HIV
Yeah.
who are doing whatever their career path is, and they might even be disclosing, but they're not in that. They're like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's for y'all to go do. I'm gonna go to the bank and get my check, or I'm
Yeah.
gonna, I'm gonna keep teaching these kids because that's my pathway. And HIV is just, it's a thing. Y'all go fix it
Mm-hmm.
for me. Why do you do this instead? And I know you have other passions. So,
Yes. Too
and
many.
that can be monetized. So why this becomes your pathway?
Because of the love. Recently, I just did an interview with folks who are talking about like youth for a cure and how do youth feel about a cure. And one of the questions the lady asked me was like, so if we did have a cure, would you take it? And I was really like, kind of split between two decisions. One, because I lived with HIV my whole life. It's all I know. So I was like, how would I imagine my life without living with HIV,
Mm,
with being somebody who's not positive when I was born positive, and I just know every day to take medicine, and I know every day that I'm living with this virus. And I remember 5 years ago, before I was in this place that I'm in, where I would take the cure like this. I was not happy. I was not confident. I was not in in this Antoinette. And I think I've worked so hard to get to where I am now, where I wouldn't take a cure. I'm so happy and appreciative of the life that I've lived and what I'm blessed with. Why get rid of it? So to answer your question, um, for that simple fact, because I want more people to appreciate living with HIV as a gift versus a curse, um, and appreciate it in a way where it's not harmful, it's not hurtful, it's not something to hate the way I did in the past. And you're going to go through your trials and
mm-hmm.
tribulations with HIV, but if you look at the bright side and the blessing in disguise is what I call it,
Yeah.
um, then you will learn to just love yourself 10 times, 100 times more. So that's where I'm at. I
Child,
love.
this is, what they say is you're bringing the what is it, the conversation to the congregation, sister. Thank you so very, very much. I got a next question for you that leads on from there. First, my comment was going to be, well, no wonder you're getting all of these accolades and awards and recognitions all over the place, because you're kind of badass. So I'm noticing that my brother TJ, also lovingly known as Tigner Rand, is in the house. Hi, Tigner. Welcome to our conversation.
Good evening. How you ladies doing?
I'm
Doing
better now.
wonderful.
I accepted. I embraced the little retrograde moment with Mercury. And I'm like, wait, what? Oh, okay. Happy to be here, T. How's
Yes,
everything?
everything is great. I thank you. You are a phenomenal sister. You are able to handle the helm of conversation. So I appreciate you stepping in. Uh, and it was not even asked, but you do what to do. Hello, Antoinette. How you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. Happy to be here. Thank you.
That's awesome. I don't know if just to kind of fill you all in, both have joined Health IQ, rolling out Health IQ, and the purpose of this show is really to have conversation, which you both have had between what Dazon and yourself were talking about. Um, and I appreciate your candidness that you have been able to divulge, because it takes a strong person to be able to speak about it. You kind of gave us your journey. Now, how easy, I know it took time, but how many other people are have a challenge with facing being HIV positive, even within their family? And I'm sure Dazon can attest to it, that even in rural parts of our country, people don't even talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, what are some of the things, as a peer specialist, what are some of the things that you try to tell people to help them to be able to have healthy conversations with family and even friends about being HIV positive?
One of the main things that I tell people is just do your research, educate yourself, because if the first thing you do is educate yourself, then there's nothing nobody else can tell you about what you're living with. I had a lot of people, and I hear a lot of people who be trying to tell me stuff about HIV, who be trying to check me about having sex and check me about what I need to be doing about HIV. And they don't even know nothing about HIV, not even what the words stand for. So if you can educate yourself, first, learn what it is that you're living with, how you contracted it, how you transmit it, ways you can make yourself undetectable, all types of things, then there's nothing anybody else to tell you. That's step one. And then, of course, number two, I told them to love themselves. It took me a while to get to the space that I'm in. I had to work very diligently on myself first and look myself in the mirror. I had to pay attention to my flaws. I had to point my own flaws out, and I had to fix them, in a way where I felt that they were fixed, or I had to just love them. Some things can't be corrected. Some things you can't change. So loving yourself, loving who you are, loving what you are blessed with. A lot of times I hear when I tell people that I'm born positive, they tell me, oh, well, that's not your fault. You had no choice in the matter, as if somebody chooses to contract HIV. Mm-hmm. So whether you contracted it by birth or sexually or by drugs, anything, nobody chooses to contract HIV. It's not a choice. Mm-hmm. So you have to love it either way.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Yeah.
Miss Dazon.
Hey.
We're here for a reason.
Yay, boy.
Yeah. You have been the founder and president of SisterLove over 20 years.
31.
Oh, excuse me. I'm shorting the journey. That's 31 years. And you have something that's coming up this week where you have, over the years, have been able to pay homage to sisters like Antoinette, who've taken on dual responsibility of being a leader in their community, be it on a job or on organizations or whatever it may be. But you are recognizing and honoring women who have been HIV positive, but also who kind of work in leaders. Can you talk about the program, the award ceremony that's taking place this week?
I can talk about it, but I can do better by showing you what you just heard for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Is what we do. It's giving grace and gratitude, recognition, amplification to the stories and the voices of some incredible people that do a whole lot of work that nobody ever knows about. So, SisterLove is it's 31 years old. We are a service provider, so we see people all the time. Antoinette can tell you the stories of coming up with folks who have all kinds of anxieties and shame and stigma associated with just about, having sexual pleasure and loving who they love. And then at the same time, having to do this in an environment where people want to judge, right? And so it's hard once you find an HIV diagnosis and you're a woman or you're a girl or you are non-binary, you're a non-gender conforming or any other woman identified recognition, and not getting the equal treatment, not getting equal access, and not getting equal recognition, even though you're out there doing the damn thing, right? So we want to say thank you. And we take our time out this time of the year, every year. We're usually even competing up with homecoming almost every year. And so virtually we're in the same similar space. But we want to spend some time telling the women's stories that there are women out here who are changing things, who are representing communities of women living with HIV that people have brushed aside or left invisible, but they're not invisible. And they're being seen on purpose. And they're out loud with intention. And our job is to recognize that and say thank you for that. And to say, hey, people, these folks are getting things done, and let's pay attention to that. Because what I always say is, as much as we pay attention to what's going on in this country around the epidemic, the fact that women are improving in our HIV rates, right? It's getting better, but it's not getting better for everybody everywhere, right? There are still numbers increasing in certain pockets and certain age groups and certain communities of women, including transgender women, right? And trans men. But what I know for sure is that in the rest of the world, we do occupy a little more than half of the epidemic, and that most of those people are women of African descent. So it will be Black women who are going to have to end this epidemic, because that's what women do. And that's what Black women are capable of doing. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, y'all can fight as hard as y'all want around getting to the end of this HIV situation. But if Black women are not getting there at the same time as everybody else, y'all ain't going to end this epidemic, period. You're just not going to. And so the converse of that can also be that while it was men who opened the door on the fight against this virus and against all of the structures and social mores and challenges and discriminations and criminalizations and access to healthcare issues that come with it, right? I do know for a fact that it will be the Black women who end this epidemic. And so, although all of our honorees are not all Black women, they still follow the lead of the Black women who are the honorees, because once we center all of our work in Black women, that means we lift everybody.
I like
So,
that.
so what we've got is Antoinette is one of our honorees this Friday. I'm so excited about that. The masses go wild. I don't have my little sound effects right here, but I'm so proud, and this is what I mean by, you've heard her story, and let me tell you something. That's just her experience. When we have women like Antoinette who not only tell their story, TJ, but they can connect it to the policies, they can connect it to the issues, they can connect it to the decisions that people are making about their lives, because they understand the context in which their lives are happening in this broader universe of law policy that's unjust and unequal. So we educate, mentor, and support these our women leaders around understanding the sexual and reproductive justice framework, in understanding how to locate HIV inside the human rights framework. How do we connect sexual and gender justice with Black Lives Matter, with economic justice, and with environmental justice, and with justice in the science and research, right? Because these are even critical issues that we're talking about right now, with people like all a flutter around the COVID vaccine. But should there be the science, just like there is unproven science that there are vaccines that work? So aside from all of these politics, when we get there and we know that it's working, we're going to need people who are going to be willing to participate. We're going to need people to be willing to say, you know what? I need the vaccine because me and my family, we got to get to work. We have to live. We got to have healthy children. We got to be able to do all of this. And by the way, we want to get together for Thanksgiving, at least in a couple of years. So can we get this, virus out of the way? It's all about us coming together and telling our own stories. We don't have to be listening to the others. We can listen to ourselves. We got women living with HIV who can tell you what that's like, taking the medicine every day. We've got people who are participating in clinical trials who can tell you what that's like every day. We've got Black providers who know what it's like to be taking care of people who are living with HIV or any of these other morbidities that we're having to deal with, these health issues. We can listen to each other because the power is in our own stories.
Yes. Yeah. You speaking of COVID, what are you hearing? How has COVID impacted people who are HIV positive? Is it more severe than we'll say people who are negative?
So the science is telling us not so much, but it also depends on the economy of where they are. It depends on the healthcare system where they are. There are some countries where it has been more impactful, but they are also having trouble with achieving a lot of their viral suppression before COVID, right, with HIV. But I don't know, Antoinette, I'm not trying to throw you on the block, but I think that there's a story here when we talk about how has COVID impacted people living with HIV.
So just that, in the beginning, I was even worried about contracting COVID. And but that's another story. And the fear was because at the time I was not virally suppressed. So it's definitely a fear for folks who have trouble with adherence, have trouble becoming virally suppressed.
What does that mean for folks who have no clue what virally suppressed means?
So virally suppressed means that you are adherent to your HIV regimen, your medication, and the HIV virus is suppressed or low. So low in your body where you cannot transmit the virus, or it cannot be picked up as detectable on a test. So now I am undetectable, feeling very
It's
strong.
almost like this beam of undetectable light just came around you, with, especially with your tapestry behind you. It's like, ooh, she just went undetectable glow.
Yes, and I'm gonna need that to like shine above me in some way.
Exactly.
So basically, quick question. So based upon what you're saying, so was it prior to recently that you were detectable? So is this something?
Yes, I was detectable, primarily because of a situation that happened with my medical provider, and that stems from a lot of biases, which I talk about a lot between patient and provider, and I had just in March, I switched providers. And I actually got a Black woman provider now, who takes more care of me, and I take more care of myself. She listens to me, she understands me, and she was able to switch me to a regimen that works better for me and my body.
Okay.
So I want to make sure we just heard that racial bias in healthcare, which was even a question asked of the person who is trying to get confirmed to the next, seat on the Supreme Court. Very same question was posed to her today. What I'm hearing is that racial bias has an immediate impact on your own health and well-being, including your health behavior.
Racial and gender.
Racial and gender bias.
Without going into a lot of detail, so based on this racial bias, so is it safe to assume that he took for granted or took a lack of care, or they took a lack of care of your situation, even though they knew that you were positive?
Yes.
And it was like, oh, whatever, I'll give you ABC, you need XYZ.
Exactly. So prior to moving to Atlanta, I was undetectable. I was undetectable all my life, as I told Dazon, because I was walked through my HIV diagnosis by my mom. I've always been undetectable my whole life. And up until I moved to Atlanta, where I had a new provider, and I was on a 2-pill regimen. He took me off of one of the pills, not knowing, even though he was a doctor, a HIV specialist, not knowing that specific regimen that I was on was because I had a resistance to one of the meds in that pill. And yes, so even when I would speak to this provider and I would tell that provider that the medicine is not working for me, I feel sick, I feel like I'm weak all the time. They refused to listen to me. They kept accusing me of not taking my medicine and accusing me of not doing what I had to do for my health. And it was up until January where actually we returned to work. I don't mention this to people, but we returned to work and my vision was completely blurry. I couldn't see anything. I was very sick. I just kept trying to push through. But at that moment, I knew that I needed to switch providers immediately. And then upon providers to a female provider who I love, she actually told me, well, why did he switch you off of that regimen when I even know, everyone knows that regimen is specific for people who has a resistance to one of those pills. He should have known. That doctor did do multiple resistant tests. I guess it did not come up on the resistant test that he did do, but she was able to inform me of that. And then at a support group.
But listening to you also mattered. Whatever the test said was one thing. Whatever you said was another.
Exactly, because you're telling how you felt. So it's so in a case like this,
it's the same thing that happens with Black women dying in childbirth. They don't listen to her.
Yep.
So what? I hate to say this, but what can be done in a case like this? for, as far as, I'm not looking for no repercussion or suit or anything, but how many other people are in your position, be it male or
Right.
female, and
Right.
And
possibly
don't
have
have the same
died?
agency.
Yes, and have
Yeah.
died because of lack of whatever or change.
Yeah. Along to that, the medicine that I was on, more men take that medicine at the time. So I was really saying like it was not working for my body. This new medicine that I'm on, more women do take this medicine. They have done more clinical trials on women in this medicine. And they know that the long lasting effects of it on women's bodies. So for other women, I feel like a lot of women living with HIV have been in this situation. And it's just up to the provider to really listen to their patient. And it's also, we have to also speak up, continually speak up. And if they're not listening, go to somebody else and speak up. And I think for me, I waited too long before I spoke up.
How many months was it?
It was 3 years.
Oh, wow.
It was.
Wow, that's a long time. That's a long time.
And it's what happens, and this happens so much, is you don't realize how much time passes.
Yeah.
You just don't. You hang in there and you say, okay, well, the next appointment, I'll see if something happens different. The next thing you know, it's a year, it's 2 years later. I know folks who have gone through that where they just stopped taking them, right? And as long as they were feeling fine without them,
okay,
and the side effects, they thought they were okay until they look up and they've got like 3-4 years worth of medication in their bathroom cabinet. And that's, because it's going to keep coming to you as long as you keep them filled. So what was beautiful, and I think we lost Antoinette, she'll come back in. But what is beautiful about folks like Antoinette is that we have been looking for these sisters all over the country for 11 years now. We started in 2009. We even last year not only celebrated our 10th year of honoring these kinds of sisters, but we also celebrated the same 30th year for a lot of the women who were with us the first time we celebrated Women with 20 Years in 2009. So we now have a cohort, a posse, a network, a society of over 250 women just like Antoinette. And some of them were diagnosed later in life. Some of them were diagnosed later in life. Some of them still have everyday jobs, but this is also the work that they do as advocates, speaking out, going into schools. There are pastors who have come open to their, fellow congregation, and they're still doing the darn, thing from the pulpit every Sunday, or in the church choirs. There are teachers. We've got sisters who made films, written books. So they are telling the stories that need to be told, that actually are a part of the movement to end this epidemic. And they're not seen and heard enough, especially in spaces where they can also be loved, and that they can be appreciated, loved, and they can have a little bit of respite. Because the day after we do our 5-star, red carpet step and repeat kind of night, which will be in person and virtual this year.
Where's it going to be?
We are also going to do an institute, a virtual institute, a leadership institute the next day, which this year, because it's virtual, will be open to people to attend with us and just learn a whole lot more about what Antoinette is talking about. The event will be this Friday, the 16th of October, starting at 7:00 p.m. Eastern Time, live, coming to you streaming on all of our major platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, maybe not Twitter, YouTube, and who knows what else. And we will also be in person, completely beyond all the level expectations of keeping ourselves COVID safe and COVID free. We have a minimum, maximum number of people who will be in person. We will have it at the Atlanta Zoo. In the new event hall that is gorgeous, with the patio overlooking the African safari part of the zoo. It's going to be we got to make sure that we have some ambiance that showers people with some excitement on their webs.
How can people, if those who want virtually join, work in the
Absolutely. And I do want to mention that in addition to some other local folks that people recognize, Karen Greer from CBS is joining us, 46 News, I think it is joining us on Friday night, as well as Dwight Eubanks and Will Nettles, this brother singer out of Alabama who is fire. And we've also got our headlining act is Chris Blue. Chris Blue is an amazing vocalist. He's the winner of The Voice, 12th season. I think it was the 12th season. Yeah. And he is one of Alicia Keys's mentees who won that year. And they're now in studio cutting albums together and stuff. So we're excited to have him in person with us at the zoo. And you were asking for how people can get to us. It's the most simplest way to do it is to come to our website, sisterlove.org. That's sisterlove.org. And the first thing that's going to pop up is Welcome to the 2020. And you can register both for the award ceremony and you can register for the Institute as well. There's no cost for either one, but we are so open to however you can give, whatever you can give, because this is a moment where not only are we saying thank you to these people, to these sisters and these women of amazement, but it's also our community and our constituents' time opportunity to say thank you to my team, to SisterLove, and to all of the folks that we serve, and to the folks who do all of the work, because we are who we serve, right? And so all of the folks who have stuck it out through this COVID era, still doing HIV testing, still doing prevention education, still doing counseling and linking people to care, and supporting places where people were getting COVID testing to make sure that they were understanding about their HIV risks at the same time, especially during all of this lockdown period with not a whole lot to do together. So there's all kinds of reasons for us to be talking about these co-pandemics together and making sure we're doing it in a racial context, because it's real and it's about our people.
Yeah, let's throw another cog in this wheel. This is Breast Cancer Month.
Yes, it is.
Have you ever experienced any sisters who are breast cancer and also are HIV positive? How does that?
Absolutely. Let me tell you something. So first and foremost, what's also important to understand is that HIV is also a disease of aging now, right? And what I mean by that is that right now, almost 60% of the people living with HIV, sorry about that, the pooches got excited again.
That's about 60.
He is. Yeah, he's a big one. About 60% of the folks who are living with upwards of about 60% of people living with HIV are over 50. And so there'll be 70% over 50 within the next 5 to 10 years. So all of the other kinds of comorbidities, the different cancers that come, some, not all with aging, but a lot with aging, including breast cancer, cervical cancer, reproductive cancers, colon cancers, pancreatic cancers, lung cancers, prostate cancers. Yes, we do. And for Black women, the survival rate is still just the same as it is in everyday society, because understanding that someone who is virally suppressed, yes, their immune system is still not in the same position as someone who doesn't have HIV at all. But with viral suppression, now your body is open to just experiencing everything everybody else does. And so if you have any of the predetermining genes, like the HERS2 or any other predetermining genetic codes that would have impacted you without HIV, then they're also going to show up, and that is a challenge. But it doesn't change. I mean, it doesn't really change anything as long as you're taking regimens or therapies for your cancer that are not contraindicated to your HIV meds, your antiretrovirals, then you're in okay shape. I mean, remember, we can also talk about how people are able to co-cure hepatitis C and save their livers at the same time as they're treating their HIV and remaining virally suppressed. So there are ways that we can deal with some of these other chronic life-threatening issues, even with HIV, that aren't that indicatively more terrible. The core issue is the impacts of the medications over time. Like when you're taking these antiretrovirals over time, how does that mess with your renal system, your kidneys, your liver, your bone mass, how there's more bone density issues where people have osteoarthritis much earlier because they're on the ARVs, and because the HIV has an impact with their immune system over that, and in terms of their bone structure and bone density and all of those kinds of things. So those do happen over time, but those are also some of the same comorbidities that people without HIV are experiencing as they get older as well.
I understand. What was the vision behind SisterLove? What made you decide, hey, this is something I have to take on and become superwoman to do this? Because, hey,
okay,
come on, man. You have taken, and it has not been said, but you're not just in Atlanta, you are worldwide.
We're getting there.
Well, you in Africa, you in South Africa.
That might as well be worldwide. Once we get all over the continent, that's worldwide for us, ain't it? So it's interesting, Tigner, because you know what happens when you are in your purpose. It is supposed to, it ain't no big thing. You do what you do, and that's it. So when folks see all of this, hey, Antoinette is back. When folks see all of this other stuff, it's what I do. So I don't really know how to answer that other than I follow the God voice that my Nana told me I'm supposed to always listen to. And when I know I'm in the right place at the right time to do the right thing, that's what I'm supposed to do. And that's what happened for me when I was still a student at Spelman College. A little thing you know about. Thank you. Yeah. A little thing you know about. And out of that work, because I was working in women's health in a reproductive health way in a women's health center here locally, and just happened to be in that place to be exposed to this issue of AIDS impacting women in this city when nobody had anything for them at all. And they were all Black, except for a few who might have been white at the time. And so we wanted to figure out how to fix some of that, or how to at least curb some of that. We thought we weren't going to be here 30 something years later. That was not what we expected until we looked up one day and said, oh, hell, there's so many other things that make getting to the end of HIV hard. We got to tackle a whole lot of these things at the same time, which is how we end up in the intersectionality space, which is how we end up helping create the movement that we now know as reproductive justice, because we have to be able to look at all of the intersections. Antoinette was laying it out in her own story. All the intersections that show up in a human being, we should have intersectional responses for all of those intersectional oppressions. And Antoinette's back. Hey, Natty.
Hi. You see how Mercury just did me dirty? You see
that?
Yes.
Did you practice that thing that we talked about earlier when we said, what are we going to do when Mercury, shows her ugly face and says, communications be damned?
Oh,
did you breathe? Did you get through that? I'm so glad you're back.
Oh gosh, yes, I had to recenter. I had to remind myself that I am a child of this universe and my ancestors got my back, because you just tried it, but we back.
And we're back, and we're glad you're back. Tigner, Antoinette's back.
I see. Yay. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. And I know I wasn't sweating. I knew you'd be back. Technology is a thing that we're learning how to get used to. COVID has put us in a place that most of us have never been in before. It's been a good and a bad thing, but it has allowed us to still kind of communicate and have business and work on a day-to-day basis. So it took me longer than I needed to get in today because of technology, but I just had to just woosah and sit back and work. Yeah. To allow everything to catch up with itself.
Yes, and we did our woosah and got to work for you.
Yeah. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. So what can the audience expect on Friday? Can you kind of give us a little run of the show?
So I've given you some of the headlines and things of who was going to appear, but I think mostly what people can expect is some good feelings. I think that's the most important thing. I think what people can expect is to learn some stories about people that they never knew but can connect with. I think folks are going to have some fun. I think they're going to laugh some. I also think that what folks can take away from this is that our stories are our power, and that every story matters. And because, when that very simple notion, when we say Black Lives Matter, or we say all Black Lives Matter, that's not just a catch-all phrase. That means that every Black life has a story that most often is full of a lot of commonality in terms of strife, in terms of struggle, but also in terms of triumph, and in terms of love, and in terms of fight, right? And sheer resilience and resistance, that's going to come through on Friday night, right? And it's going to come through in a way that sort of lets you go, whoa, I never thought about experiencing, Antoinette just sat here and talked about HIV as a blessing. How many folks been in that situation?
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff you're going to walk away with, because you may not have HIV, but there are people who survived a car wreck, and were in that car wreck because they were drinking, and they come out of that with a new sense around how they want to live, and they don't drink to that level anymore, and they can talk about that car wreck as a blessing. Right? Blessing. So think of any of those kinds of things, that not just your resilience, but your internal revolution kicks in, and you'll see a small series of revolutions kicking in Friday night.
I like that.
What do you think, Antoinette? You've been there before. You've seen us in action at 2020.
Yes, I've been there for the past 2 years, and I'm so mad because I'm like, nothing can beat my dress from last year. My dress.
Well, at least you had that dress last year, because nothing could beat that dress from last year. Yes, maybe you just, use that as your backdrop. Friday night.
Remind people, this is what I look.
Yes. I'm hoping, I'm wondering, and I'm just going to throw the question out there. I'm just wondering if a picture of you in that dress is on the website somewhere. I sure hope it is. I have to go back through all of the pictures from last year, but that was a fierce dress last year for sure.
Yes, I definitely want to just add that I'm so appreciative to be receiving this award on Friday. And I remember just watching Hidea, on Oprah when I was younger, and having that be my role model. And to be in this space now, and to actually meet Hidea by doing this work, and to be friends with my role model, and to watch her be honored last year, and for me to be honored this year, is such a huge thing for me. So I'm doing this. The reason I do this work and why I'm here is, of course, for me, and not just for me, but for all the people who are born with HIV, all genders, sexualities, life experiences, but for all my babies, or I call us the forgotten about community, for all of us. So that's why I'm so blessed and happy to have this opportunity to just open people's eyes to us, and let them know that we are here.
Yes.
And I like to say, I'm here, I'm queer, and I'm doing the damn thing.
Hello. Can I ask another question on that one? I don't know how much longer you got, TJ, but so, I've been doing this work now, Antoinette, for a generation plus, right? Because if I say I've been in the work itself, SisterLove's 31, but I've actually been doing this work about 36 years, right? So told y'all I started when I was 6 months old. But so I was a fierce child. So I can think about how we did things, how we shook some stuff up, how we disrupted things, but also how we are also, I'm Gen Xer, so how we're also products of our own era, our own generation, and how we fight to resolve challenges. We're in a different time. There's more young people, millennials and Gen Zers who are voting now than older people, than the baby boomer generation. The future generation is going to be more Black, more brown, more young, more female. How is HIV leadership going to be as this, your generation, the one just slightly even ahead of you, takes over this movement for the next 20 years until we end it? Hopefully maybe in 10 years, because the aim is 2030. But and the plan that I'm a part of is 2025. So, you know, you'll be taking on a whole nother part of the movement by then. But how is it going to be different, if at all? What's it going to look like?
If at all, I think we are going to be a little more carefree in a good way, and less cautious, because we've had leaders like you and many, many leaders who are being honored on Friday, who have opened the door or broken down the door for us, and just to give us the pathway to make our voices heard. And we do that fearlessly. I love it. I love to see it confidently. And I think it is because of the fears that tied to the epidemic 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And now we don't give no F's. We don't care. We don't care about how you feel. We don't care if we make you uncomfortable. And just some words from the wise Ms. Dazon. She said, if you're not making folks uncomfortable, then you ain't doing your job. So we here to make you uncomfortable as long as we make change. So.
That sounds good. I appreciate you. I appreciate your openness, and congratulations on receiving your award this year. And you're up under good tutelage. You have a good mentor. And I know that Dazon is teaching you well, because she's been at the helm of this for a very long time. Dazon, I appreciate you for coming on. This conversation needs to continue. We have World AIDS Day coming up December the 1st. So we're only a few weeks out for that. So we'll definitely need to recircle and bring a stronger conversation to the table. Much success to you and SisterLove, and continue what you're doing by helping the community, not just here in Atlanta, but globally with other parts of the country with our brothers and sisters.
Well, thank you, Tigner. We're also coming up after World AIDS Day. We're starting our planning now for our global meeting that takes place December 2021. We had to tell people now, because you know how people have to get their ducks in a row. It will be in Kampala, Uganda, first weekend in December 2021. It's called Women Now Summit on the intersections of HIV, sexual and reproductive health rights and justice in the lives of women and girls of African descent. It's going to be everything. But we'll have our first regional meeting in December of this year. So we want to be back and talk with you about that. Now we're talking about expanding this conversation to women who are identified as Black wherever they are and facing these challenges just as similarly and in solidarity as we are right here at home.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies, for your time. Thank you for the conversation. And thank you for spreading some knowledge to our people.
Thank you, Antoinette. I still can't wait to see what you wear Friday night.
Yes. Oh, I'm making my dress.
I'm not worthy. That's what I'm gonna say.
Thank you all.
I'm gonna make my way in a dress. Bye.
Health IQ.
Thank you.
God's so in love with you. He's ready to wrap his loving arms around you. All you have to do is say